You guys probably know from my tweets and comments on the discussion board I loved Children of Blood and Bone. In this video, I'm exploring 3 real-world connections in the book, 3 things I was surprised by, and 2 things I was left questioning. On page 327, hey guys, it's Lexi. Real quick, I just wanted to let you know that throughout this video, you're going to hear me mispronounce the main character's name. Her name is actually Zaylee, not Zelly. I'm sorry for the mispronunciation. A passage from Zelly reads, "It almost ate me alive, the self-hatred spun from Saran's lies. But he already took Mama. I wouldn't let him take the truth, too. In the moons following the raid, I held on to Mama's teachings, embedding them in my heart until they ran through me like blood. No matter what the world said, my magic was beautiful. Even without powers, the gods had blessed me with a gift." In this, I connected because it symbolized the importance of educating your own people and not letting the oppressor educate your children. The extreme example of the self-hating magi is Inan, whose childhood of teachings from his father made him somewhat blind to magic's good and much more critical of bad magic. This brings me to my next connection. Something that made me really emotional while reading was Inan's chapters of the book. It was sad to hear him rationalize self-hatred and genocide. But the thing I connected with most, and in a negative way because it made me want to slap all the people I know in real life who think the same way as him, was Inan's insistence that the oppressed should fight fair, or in a way that doesn't scare the oppressors. His thoughts on power were also painfully familiar. After the Diviner Holdfast is attacked, on page 412, Inan and Zelly clash over Kwame sacrificing himself with his magic to drive out King Saran's men. I rear back in disgust. What in God's names is he talking about? Kwame sacrificed himself to protect us. But imagine how it looked to the guards, Inan speaks quickly. I know Kwame's intentions were pure, but he took it too far. For years we've been warned about magic like that. What Kwame did was worse than anything fathers ever said. I blink, searching Inan's face. Where is the future king who was ready to save the Magi? The prince who threw himself in front of flames to keep me safe? I don't know this boy, afraid, making excuses for everything he claimed to hate. Or maybe I know him too well. Why in the hell did Amon, and do real-life Black Americans, believe that making the oppressor feel safe or less fearful will zap the oppressor's ignorance and hatred? Zelly had already explained the importance of Magi having their power to Inan back on page 311 when she said, "Our lack of power and our oppression are one and the same, Inan. Without power, we're maggots. Without power, the monarchy treats us like scum. In true liberal fashion," he says, "power is not the answer. It would only intensify the fight. Maybe you can't trust my father, but if you could learn to trust me, to trust my guards." Inan didn't trust Magi, but he expected them to trust him instead of desiring their power back, even when he knew his father's goal of keeping the Magi under oppressive control was real. Therefore, it's not surprising when Inan backtracks on his pledge to bring magic back to Orisha on page 412, saying, "I thought things could be different. I wanted them to be different. But after what we just saw, we have no choice. We can't give people that kind of power." I almost threw my book across the room because all I could think was, the same thing can be said about an absolute monarchy. Speaking of absolute monarchies, let's examine the totalitarian rule of Orisha and how it implemented genocide. In Inan's point of view, everything his father, King Saran, did was to keep Orisha safe, even as he killed actual Orishans. According to genocide scholar Gregory Stanton, there are 10 steps of genocide. The first step of genocide is classification, in which countries have categories to distinguish people into us and them by race, religion, ethnicity, or nationality. For example, the Germans and Jews during the Holocaust, and the Hutu and Tutsi during the Rwandan genocide. In the book, the Magi are identified as the other. The next step is symbolization, or distinguishing that group of people with the visible symbol. In the book, the Magi are identified by their white hair and dark skin. The next step is discrimination, which in the book was demonstrated by the ways diviners are talked to, how they are unfairly taxed, and how few opportunities they have. The next step is dehumanization, when the people at hand are stripped of their humanity and equated with animals, vermin, insects, or diseases. In the book, the Magi are called maggots, and Inan, when finding out he has powers, initially believes he was infected by Zelly. Step 5 is organization, in which a group or government comes together to exterminate the dehumanized group and does this by first targeting dissenters or potential threats. In the book, powerful magi like Zelly's mother were stamped out. As King Sauron says on page 83, for magic to disappear for good, every magi had to die. As long as they tasted that power, they would never stop fighting to bring it back. So the children, the diviners, who had never tasted power were okay to live. And these same diviners were taught that they were inferior and that everything they were experiencing was of the natural order. They were taught this by their oppressors. King Sauron is also the active orchestrator of the sixth step, or polarization. This happens through disseminating hate speech through mass media, forbidding intermarriage between the good group and the dehumanized group, and passing laws that take away the dehumanized group's human rights. In step 7, the genocidal leaders prepare for extermination by invoking fear among the populace with language like, if we don't kill them, they will kill us, an idea hammered into Anan and Amari's heads from youth. In this step, the leaders of the genocide also bolster their military. Step 8 is persecution, where victims are identified and separated into areas where they can be starved to death or put through trauma to break them. This is seen in the book when diviners, who are poor thanks to few opportunities in a system designed to keep them poor, are given increasingly high taxes and then shepherded into the stocks when they can't pay. Step 9 is extermination, which is talked about in different perspectives. For example, King Sauron's army went around killing all adults with white hair, and in the desert camp of diviners, water was kept expensive, slowly dehydrating them, and they didn't have much to eat. The 10th step is denial. This is the only step not shown in Children of Blood and Bone. Stanton describes it as the stage throughout the genocide and after in which the perpetrators of genocide dig up the mass graves, burn the bodies, try to cover up the evidence, and intimidate the witnesses. They deny that they committed any crimes and often blame what happened on victims. While King Sauron does blame the genocide of Magi on the Magi being violent and evil vermin who would destroy Orisha, he is transparent about his regime's role in their genocide. I wondered if this was because the genocide wasn't actually over. Maybe only after the Magi were completely gone would denial of their entire existence begin, rendering them mythical creatures of the past for future generations of Orishans. And if not mythical creatures, a completely forgotten group of people. On page 432, Anan realizes about his father, he doesn't just want to erase magic, he wants to erase them. I wondered if King Sauron had further plans to erase the history and existence of the Magi fully, and if in the second book, someone who is aware of his plans will be seeking to continue them. So the first thing I was surprised by was the way Miss Adeyemi skillfully gave each character a role in the system of oppression. Zelly is the courageous, oppressed Magi who fights back against the system when given the right resources, education, and opportunity. Anan was a member of the ruling class who actively sought to oppress and by extension, kill Magi. Though for a moment he seeks to right he and his father's wrongs, he is too brainwashed to complete this task. Then there was Amari, who was a member of the ruling class who grappled with the realities of classism and genocide, and later seeks to amend them. She moves towards the guard post at the central square while my insides twist. Though no food fills my stomach, it churns with the truth. All those years sitting silent at the table, sipping tea while people died. But even while it's clear King Sauron's oppressive genocidal regime is horrific and needed to be ended, I was surprised and pleased that Anan and Zelly's point of views gave a well-rounded picture of the Magi, and they weren't perfect beings. The historical perspective of each side unfolds with each chapter. Past Magi abused power, and both characters brought up valid questions about how magical powers should be regulated without abuse or oppression involved. I'm sure this will be explored further in the next book. The third thing I was surprised by was Anan and Zelly falling in love. Zelly seemed to question her own faith in what she was doing after falling for him, and that annoyed me. I'm not a big fan of romance in young adult titles, because they always seem to take up much more space than concepts of self-love, self-esteem, and self-perseverance. They also completely alter characters' motivations in a way that can seem unrealistic. For me, this was reflected in Anan's lifelong hatred of Magi being nearly completely eradicated because of his love for Zelly. While him being a Magi contributed to his newfound tolerance, it was his love for Zelly, a girl he had barely spent any time with, that led to him betraying his father. What do you guys think about the love connection that went on between Zelly and Anan? Was it realistic? Did you like it? Was it annoying? How do you think it impacted your reading? Okay, so here's what I was left questioning. According to Tomi Adeyemi's website, the second and third books will come out in 2019 and 2020 respectively. Until the next book, I'll be spinning out over these two questions. There are 10 Magi clans, and 4 were mysteriously left out of the book. Well, not left out, because the Afifi clan, or the Wenders, and the Aye clan, or the Grounders, and the Aranko, or the Tamers, and the Omai clan, or the Tiders, were mentioned. But there was no character who was a Wender, Grounder, Tamer, or Tider in the book. Will these roles be a major force in the second book? I actually cannot wait for more lore and history from canon. At the end of the book, when Zelly notices Amari with a streak of white hair, her passage reads, "Then my blood chills to ice." Was this a negative thing, or was this Zelly's reaction of surprise? Will there be bad blood between Zelly and Amari because of this? Not only that, but how is Amari a Magi? Was it ever fully explained how Anan came to be a Magi? I cannot wait to see how this unfolds. So I hope you guys enjoyed this month's book club read as much as I did, and I'm looking forward to us returning to this series next year. Hopefully you guys vote for it. And for the month of November, we are reading The Appropriate and Timely and Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. I can't wait to dive into this good nonfiction read. We're gonna have a lot of good discussions with this. Can't wait. Be sure to get your book so we can begin discussing as soon as possible. Thanks so much for watching, guys.